All right, let's talk product attributes. So product attributes are the building blocks of products. So if we look at any old product, take this one here, wood type, grain direction, panel face, quantity, width, height. These are all product attributes. Even comments, in this case, is a product attribute. Now most of the time, product attributes end up being at the group level drop downs or multiple choice, like this one and this one. They can have a picture and as many options as you'd like to give them. Not only that, but you can categorize all the options in here. Let's say you want to do a category called hardwoods and list a few, then another category called softwoods and list a few more under that. As we talked a little bit before, these are called group attributes, and these are called line item attributes, simply to distinguish which ones will have effect on all the group and which ones will only affect each line. Let me show you where to create attributes and show you a few different types of them. So if we go to e-commerce, product attributes, you'll land on this page. Right now it's just showing a list of all the attributes you have in your site. You can filter this list down by looking at the name or by showing only the type of attribute you're looking for. So do this with me. Let's create an attribute. So click the Add Attribute button. The display name is what people actually see. Now most likely in your site, you'll need one called width. So let's just create that one together. You can delete this later if you need. So type in what you want people to actually see. The formula name is what the site has to use in the background. You don't have any control over this. And you can see that the system wants to format it a certain way. You really don't have to worry too much about this. Let's decide what type we're going to build. And let me just quickly talk through the difference between all of them. A number attribute is just a number in a box, or rather a blank box that a number is going to be typed into. That's actually what we want for our width example. So if you know the user is going to be putting in a number, this is the one you want to use. We're asking them for the width, they're giving us a number. These comments are just for you. You can either ignore them or put something in there that's meaningful to you. The order page width and the output page width are two settings that you'll most likely leave blank and come back to later. They'll default to what they need to be, but basically what we're asking is, on the ordering page, how wide do you want this attribute to show up as? And as you start building products and putting multiple attributes next to each other in a certain order so that they look good and make sense to the user, you'll want to mess around with the widths. So how wide in characters do you want this to look on the output page width? So something to consider here. Let's say that you know you never sell anything over 1,000 inches or something. I mean, you know your limits. You can pretty much see that if someone ordered something that was 115/16, let's say, you know that the max anyone will ever need on your site is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 characters wide. But again, at first, I would just leave this blank and come back to it only if you need to adjust later. Same for the output page width. Let's say you have a cut list that you want, and I don't know, you may even want to, on this one, take up the whole line. So you might say something like this. So on the output page, it's going to take up a whole line. That's just a dumb example. Let me show you what messing with these does to an actual attribute. You keep your page up and you're going to create one, but I'm going to go back and edit an old one and show you what it does. Okay, so I'm just going to look for a number type. Let's actually try to find width. There it is. Almost every site has one. And then let's go to an actual order and verify that we have width right there. So watch what happens when I go back to this and let's just put something that we'll be able to recognize. Let's put 16 in and save it. Come back to my order. Let's save this. And look what it's done to the width attribute. Let's go back, set it back where it was. And let's look on the output page. Let's look at a panel list. Okay, so it's just sitting here at its default. Let's tell it to do something crazy. Refresh the page. There we go. Let's put it back. Now you can also pad it. Let's do 5 right and 5 left. And go back and check out what we did. See how it added space? 5 characters here, 5 characters there. Or let's say only on the right side and see what that did. So you get a sense of how you can mess around with the widths and padding to make these look how you want them to. You can also change the center left, or right text alignment. And this setting, let me just show you what it does. So this is what it looked like before. And if we go to an output page, now this is a mess because we've only done this to one of these. But you can see that what it has done is it's repeated every time a new header. So if we wanted to do this for real, we would make all of these repeat as well, and it would look clean. So it's basically saying, do you want to see the labels only once up here, or do you want to repeat them on every line? It's most common to uncheck this and leave it like this. All right, so let's come back over here and come down to the number settings. Okay, so it's asking, is it a preset? Now what presets are, let me show you. Click this and save it. Go back to our order page, go to the actual order, refresh it. So when we're filling out an order, now that we have a preset in the site, this bar just appeared. So since I have width set, and this is a weird example, think about more like a kitchen that's going to be all alder, where the whole house is maple. But let's say that we want to set something once and have everything that follows that retain this attribute. So let's put something in here and then proceed to order something that has a width, and you can see it's already filled out with the preset. And here it is again. I can collapse these presets and open them up and change them for every new product. Or, and this is theoretically how you would do it most of the time, this bar would be sitting up here at the very beginning of an order. You'd fill it out with your wood type, your profiling, you'd collapse it, and then not really deal with it again. And every product you pull up and start ordering is going to preset those attributes how you want them. So back to the question, is this a preset? So you'll need to determine which attributes in your site are presets. And typically width is definitely not one of them, but maybe something like wood type or the like would be. So let's get rid of that. Oh, and if you do select it, it has an order. So which ones do you want on the far left, far right, etc. And if you remember back, the lower the number, the further left its preference will be. Okay, so let's look at precision. A customer can technically put in whatever kind of number they want, but obviously you have your limits. So the precision setting just changes that number to something you can actually accept. And keep in mind you can have different precisions for different attributes, or make them all the same. The maximum and minimum value are just that. The maximum you'll ever let anyone order as width is 100, put it here. Same with the minimum. This is kind of a hard-coded setting, and I would actually recommend leaving these blank and dealing with maximums and minimums in validations, which we'll get into later. It's just an option that gives you more control and more options down the road. If you put a default value in, it will default fill in this number with whatever you put it in. So let's try it. Let's put in a 10, refresh our page, and order something new. You see the width came up as 10, just by itself. This works well on, say, depth of cabinet of 24 inches for a base cabinet and 14 for an upper, things of that nature. Let's go back, and the next setting are the imperial and metric settings. So just quickly, in case you didn't know, your customers can order in millimeters, and it converts everything to inches or whatever your preferred unit. So in other words, it doesn't matter whether your shop is metric or imperial or whether your customers are metric or imperial. Each company can set its own preference, and Allmoxy will do the conversion in the middle. But in order to do it properly, we need to know what this is. So in this case, we've got it set to imperial is inches, and metric is millimeters. And then the system needs to know which unit you're going to use in all your formulas. Or in other words, on the back end, what are you using? And then you can also set a picture, although on number attributes, it's typically not common. But you just click here, browse to your picture, and upload it. Now at first, you're not going to see output pages to put this on because we haven't built any yet. But this just lets us hide and show different attributes on different output pages. A general one like width is typically going to be put on every single one. And typically you want the option to put it on all the output pages. The help info is a WYSIWYG editor. What I mean by that is what you see is what you get. And if you type that out, what you see is what you get. WYSIWYG. That's a side note in case we say it later. A WYSIWYG editor is just a simple way of saying you can build something here. You have all these buttons and tools. You can put pictures and tables and all kinds of controls in here and build out a type of small web page. Or you can click this and go right to the HTML. But the help info, what it is when you have an attribute and you click on the attribute, if you have help info in there, it will bring up a small pop-up that explains the ins and the outs of that attribute. It's just a way for you to add lots of different information in a rare case when you need a whole page to explain your product. And that's it for a number attribute. Go ahead and build yours out. And again, don't worry, this doesn't have to be perfect. And save it and exit. And now let's look at a different type of attribute. Let's go to our product attributes and let's look at checkbox attributes. This time. This site doesn't have any, so let's just add one. I'm not going to go over everything again that's already been covered, but I do want to talk about the things unique to this type of attribute. So we're talking about checkbox, which uses Boolean logic or is like a yes/no question. So we just went over what all of this already is, the difference being the checkbox description. So this is the explanatory text that goes next to the checkbox in the order form. So essentially you'll have your checkbox and then this text next to it. So you'll have to be descriptive enough to know where they know what they're turning on and off. And then you can check it by default or leave it unchecked. The other settings are just like the other ones. So let's look at a different type. We'll save the select for last. We've already done number, so let's try text field. This one is almost exactly like the number one, except it's just for text. So there's not much more to say about that. A paragraph is pretty self-explanatory. It just gives the user a big box to type a paragraph in. These are good for comment sections and things like that. You can give it a default height in number of lines. So for example, this box right here is 1 line high. You can set that to 10 and it would be down to here. And you can give it a default value. This box has a default box height of 2 lines. The rest is just the same. So the last one we need to talk about, which is probably the most common and complicated, yet versatile, the select attribute. So you see that as soon as you select it, you're given a whole new section for selector settings. The rest of these are just like you're used to. So let's go over how to use this. This is what a blank one looks like, and you fill it out like this. So you can see that I can add as many rows and columns as I want. And I'm basically building a table. And then I can fill these tables out. To get a better idea of this, let's look at one that we've already built. So let's look at it side by side inside a product so it's easy to see what's going on. So you see, you can select these. And as I'm selecting, the picture comes up, and in the background, all of this is working. So if the user selects cherry, I can now reference the cost for cherry. I can also link it to a certain supply. And these big tables are primarily what we use to generate pricing formulas, part formulas, machining settings, etc. So to associate this with supplies, you'll click this. And doing so opens up the supply item association. For each line item, you can select the location and then the supply item that it's associated with. In a brand new system, you won't have these yet, but I want to show you how this works at the attribute level. A nice tool to help you along is you can export what you've already got saved, and you can import files from Excel to make the input of these tables go quicker. So I would suggest starting with your own Excel files, cleaning those up, and then importing them here. So check out these first left columns. The first one being the default column. You can select one of these options to be the default option. So this one will automatically pull up every time a customer selects something with this attribute in it. You can also quickly and easily turn them on and off by making the availability yes or no. And you can mess around with the selectable setting, which will allow the customer to select this for it to be disabled or to turn it into a header or category. So back to our example, I could make this one hardwoods, and I could turn it into a header, which wouldn't allow the customer to select this, but it would be more of a grouping option for these. Also, the hide if selected setting is great for things like none. So if someone selects this option and this is set to yes, this option will just be hidden on output pages, so you don't have to pay attention to it anymore. Also worth noting, if you look over here, you can see exactly which products actually contain this attribute. And if you need to create an attribute that's like this one, similar but not the same, it might be easier to clone it and then just edit a few things. So go ahead and build a few select attributes that we can use in products. After you've done that, you pretty much know the basics of creating product attributes, and we'll show you how to use them in another video.